Is there a slight difference, in, for example, in terms of pollution levels and so on? There's a great joke, but I won't tell it about Sanya. Anyway, same period as the Brantford Sanya study, this study they found a higher incidence of cortical bone defects in the children in the fluoridated Newburgh compared to the unfluoridated Kingston. About 2 to 1, 13.5% in the fluoridated, 7.5%. The cortical bone, there are two main parts of the bone, right? There's the outside part, that's the cortical bone, and the inside bone, that's called the trabecular bone. Now the trabecular part of the bone is built like that, like it's a support, it has a supporting structure. And that's why the spine is dominated by the trabecular bone, because you have to support your whole body weight. But the cortical bone is the outside layer, and that is a lamellar structure, and that's designed to minimize breakage. And if you see weakening or defects in the cortical bone, the first thing that should come to you is, oh my God, are we going to get increased bone fractures? Well, they didn't do anything with this at the time. But a few years ago, a group in Mexico, led by Alarcon Herrera, they looked at children in the Guadiana Valley in Mexico. This is an area of high natural levels, 1.5 to 5.5 parts per million. Do not be put off by the fact that these are high levels, because what they did was a very sensible thing, and it's something that should be repeated in Canada, but it's never been done. And that was to compare, to see if there was an association between the severity of dental fluorosis, knowing that the more fluoride that a child is exposed to before their permanent teeth come out, you can't get dental fluorosis after the permanent teeth are out. But the more fluoride that the child or the baby is exposed to before the permanent teeth are erupted, the more severe the dental fluorosis. So dental fluorosis is a biomarker for a fluoride exposure. And look what they got. Oh my God, it's almost linear. They did it for children, those are the red dots, and they did it for adults. They found that the incidence of bone fractures increased almost directly as the severity of dental fluorosis increased. The more fluoride that the child was exposed to, the more bone fractures were being reported, and it extended into adulthood as well. I mean, incredible. The difference, there was a doubling of the frequency of bone fractures just going from no dental fluorosis to the very mild, and then another doubling from the very mild to mild. Now that's important. I mean, they tried to discredit this study by saying, oh, this is just high natural levels. It's not the point. They compared the frequency of fractures with dental fluorosis. And remember, we are now getting dental fluorosis in North American children, the very mild, mild, and moderate. We've got over 1% of kids are up here. They criticized the methodology. This was done in 2001, but they've never attempted to repeat it in any fluoridating country. And yet, this is such an easy biomarker for an epidemiologist to have this. This thing screams at you. You know, if you can tell the difference between no dental fluorosis, very mild, mild, moderate, and severe, then you know how much fluoride the kids were exposed to. Now you can look at lowering of IQ, thyroid function, hyperactivity, bone fractures, anything you want to look at in children that may be related to fluoridation, you could be examining right now. But instead of Health Canada spending money to do this, they spend millions of dollars hiring experts to prove that fluoridation is safe in these bogus, biased reviews. And they've just done it. They've just done it. I don't know how much money they paid those 6 experts to give their atrocious advice. Most countries don't fluoridate their water. We are led to believe in America that everybody drinks fluoridated water. Well, nearly everybody does in the United States, over 70%. But worldwide, a distinct minority are fluoridated. There's only 8 countries in the world that have more than 50% of their population drinking fluoridated water. Most of them are English-speaking, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and the United States, New Zealand, and most of them are heavily influenced by American policies. America has a way of getting its friends to do things. You might like promising them a lot of money. There was an enormous amount of pressure for Ireland in 1963 to adopt mandatory fluoridation. All our fluoridationists over here went over to Ireland and testified in court that this should go on. 98% of Western Europe does not drink fluoridated water. 4 of these countries, Austria, France, Germany, and Switzerland, drink fluoridated water, have fluoridated salt. But all the rest, neither fluoridate their water nor fluoridate their salt. Oh, and we were told last night, that's because they have high natural levels of fluoride. Absolute poppycock! To say that any of these countries have high natural levels of fluoride, and that's the reason they didn't fluoridate, is to ignore the fact that countries like Netherlands and Sweden tried very hard to fluoridate the country, but couldn't do it. Or they started in Netherlands and they had to stop. And East Germany was fluoridated before the 2 Germanys got together, and they stopped. And Switzerland had some communities fluoridated, and they have stopped. So they just say the first thing that comes out of the top of their head to get rid of the argument for the night. So last night we were told it's because Europe has high natural levels of fluoride. And they said fluoridated salt. But I told you, only 4 countries fluoridate their salt. In Australia and New Zealand, do you know what they tell the people there when we bring this up? In Australia and New Zealand, they say, it's because they don't have the same kind of sophisticated delivery systems that we have here. That Europe doesn't have. Give me a break. Sophisticated drinking water systems? Tell that to the Germans. Tell that to the Scandinavians. Tell that to Holland. That the reason they don't fluoridate is because they don't have the centralized piping of water. Give me a break. The evidence of benefit is very weak. This is where the surprise comes. Now, this is tooth decay. This is World Health Organization data. We've plotted it, but it's the original data is from them. And it shows tooth decay in 12-year-olds from the 1960s through to more or less the present. And you see that tooth decay has been coming down in all these countries. 4 of these countries are fluoridated: Australia, Ireland, New Zealand, and the United States. And Canada is about 40%, by the way, 40% fluoridated. United Kingdom, blah, 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 not fluoridated. Can you tell the difference? Nobody can tell the difference. You couldn't tell whether you look at the tooth decay in 12-year-olds whether you're in a fluoridated or a non-fluoridated country. And if you look at the levels today, it's a wash. Let's compare US communities. There were a series of studies that came out in the early 80s, Leverett, Diesendorf, Cahoon, and others, Gray from Canada, which showed there was no difference in tooth decay between fluoridated and non-fluoridated communities. And they were puzzled by this. And eventually the US Public Health Service, through the National Institute of Dental Research, had this huge survey. It cost the taxpayers millions of dollars, at least $3.6 million. They looked at the teeth of over 39,000 children in 84 communities, some fluoridated, some non-fluoridated, and so on. And when Dr. Yamianis looked at the same measure you just saw before, which is decayed, missing, and filled teeth, that's the way you measure tooth decay, he found no statistical difference across the whole age range whether the kid came from a non-fluoridated community, a fluoridated community, or had lived some of their lives in one or the other. You can't see the difference between 5 and 17. But the organizers didn't use DMFT. They used DMFS, decayed, missing, and filled surfaces. Now this ratchets up your sensitivity by a factor of nearly 5. Because for a tooth most teeth have 5 surfaces. Think of it as a cube with 1 surface of the cube in the gum and 5 surfaces which can decay. So where before you would get 1 DMFT if 1 tooth was decayed, this would now register possibly as 5 tooth surfaces. So using this measure,